This is a movie I've been kind of waiting for, and the hype for this movie is pretty up there. I mean, it's an Edgar Wright film. We haven't had one since forever ago. I mean, it really feels like forever ago. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World is one of my favorite comedy movies of all time, and he directed that. So I had really good hopes for this, and it's just kind of okay. So today, we're going to be talking about Last Night in Soho. Last Night in Soho was released in 2021. It was written by Edgar Wright and Christy Wilson Cairns, and directed by Edgar Wright, of course. And now this stars Thomasin McKenzie as Eloise, Anya Taylor-Joy as Sandy, and they're both really good acting. I think the acting is like really good for both of them. But the issue is, like, I don't feel too connected to Anya Taylor-Joy's character, right? So the general broad strokes idea of this film, no spoilers, is that Eloise goes to London because she wants to be a fashion designer, and that's where you go if you want to be a fashion designer in the UK, I guess. And while there, she discovers that while she's sleeping, she follows the story of this girl named Sandy, and her weird exploits and her horrible boyfriend, and she wants to be an actress, and like this kind of course, then there's a whole parallelism between Hollywood and all of the awful things that come along with that, like rape and prostitution. And you know, I guess I kind of get that, but it just didn't work really well for me because I didn't really care. Like, honestly, that's like my main issue is, like, every time that Anya Taylor-Joy was on screen, I was like, okay, fine, but like, I really care about Eloise. Like, I really like Eloise. And part of that is because she also has this really awesome relationship with John, played by Michael Ajo? I can't pronounce the name. He was really, really good in this film as well. I really appreciated it. And I think the issue that I had was that Anya Taylor-Joy's character just kind of sucked. Like, everything she did was, like, obviously mistakes. And of course, it's a mistake that everyone has, particularly in the 60s, where they're just, you know, they'll be a prostitute if it means they can be in the entertainment business. But it's still super frustrating. And I'm just like, I don't really care that much about Anya Taylor-Joy's character. And that definitely withheld some of the oomph that this movie was supposed to have. And not that it was bad, because it wasn't. The idea is really cool. The cinematography and, like, the filming and the special effects were all really, really cool. I appreciated all of that. But, like, I couldn't really care, right? And there's two big twists in the film that I'm not going to talk about, of course, but I do want to mention them so that you know what my thoughts are. In case you have seen it, you'll know what I'm talking about. They're both fine. The twists are fine. I like the twists. I was like, okay, cool. They're kind of predictable. They're not, like, overly predictable, like everyone's going to get it, but, like, I was on to most of it for most of the film. For some people who, you know, haven't watched this much, they probably won't catch up as fast as I did, but it definitely felt like you knew what was going on almost all the time. And the thing about Eloise is she kind of casts her mind back, where she kind of can see the dead normally. Like, she's just like, she mentions cats, she's like, oh yeah, I can see my mom, she's dead. And I'm just like, great, but like, why? And like, also, how does this connect to Anya Taylor-Joy's character? I don't know, because until then, she has only been able to see her mom, which makes sense, right? That actually kind of makes sense. Then she's like, oh yeah, this girl comes along, and I get to know her. But the twists were fine at the end, they were fine. The ending itself is pretty good, I don't hate it. I question it, but I don't hate it. It just feels a little lazy, almost. Some of it feels lazy. The third act is really solid, but like the end feels kind of lazy. I don't know, maybe that's just me. One thing I also want to mention is the soundtrack and the score. The soundtrack and the score for this are really, really good. I mean, the soundtrack, just like the 60s tunes just keep rolling. I'm having a good time just listening to the tunes. The soundtrack, the score is really solid too. Like, it's not as good as the soundtrack in my opinion, but the score is really good. Like, it definitely helps age the movie, which I really appreciated. But really, what I like out of this film is the performance, mainly by Thomasin McKenzie, who's really, really solid in this film. I really enjoyed her work. And to a certain extent, the directing is cool. And there's always fun when, like, you can see what's going on. Like, there's this one particular scene towards the beginning of the film. I think it's the first dream that she has about Sandy, where there's this big dance going on. And you can see that anytime that the camera goes by the guy that she's dancing with, they change actresses, right? And some people are like, oh, they must have done that digitally. That's impossible. No, I can guarantee you, and I don't know this for a fact, I guess, but I can guarantee you that was entirely practical. Like, there are times where I can just imagine, like, how hard that must have been. Because I'm sure Anya Taylor-Joy was spinning and then had to drop to the floor. And then Eloise had to jump up. And, like, I found it really funny to watch that scene because I'm like, that must have sucked to film. Because, like, there's no way to do that, you know, in special effects. That's almost certainly practical. And a lot of the movie, well, the special effects-wise, are practical, and I appreciate that. But there are some things that aren't practical, and that's okay, but there are, a lot of it is practical. A lot of the times where we see Eloise and we see Sandy at the same time, a lot of that is practical. Like, I'm fairly certain. Honestly, I'll be surprised if it's special effects, because I feel like I could have pulled off some of that with just what I have on hand. So I will be surprised if I learned that almost all of it is CG, so... if so, I don't get why you put so much work into it if you didn't have to, but anyway. Overall, it's not a bad film by any stretch of the imagination. It just wasn't really what I was expecting. It wasn't... First of all, also genre. The genre is weird in this. I don't think they balanced the genre correctly. It was part thriller, part drama, part horror film, right? Which, Antlers, which came out today as well, has the same similar feel, but it was done better in my opinion. I don't know why. I like Antlers more than I like Last Night in Soho, and that really surprises me because I was really expecting to like this film. But overall, I'm going to go ahead and give Last Night in Soho a B. Have you seen Last Night in Soho? Let me know in the comments down below what you thought about it. Please consider subscribing, because once I get to 200 subscribers, I'm going to be doing an 8-hour-long live variety show that you're not going to miss. So definitely consider smashing that subscribe button. And as always, keep watching movies and television, stay educated, and I'll see you guys in the next video.